They built a perfect eye. It came back blind. In April of 1990, the shuttle Discovery carried the most expensive science instrument ever flown up to a clean, high orbit and let it go. A telescope above the weather, above the haze, with a mirror polished smoother than almost anything human hands had ever made. It was going to show the universe in focus for the first time. Then the first pictures came back, and every star had a halo, a little smear of light. The clearest eye ever built could not focus. $1.5 billion above the atmosphere, and the thing was nearsighted. This is the story of how it got that way and what it took to go back up and fix it. This is Stardrift FM. Stay with me. The way it gets remembered and the way it actually happened are two different stories. What people remember is the gallery, the pillars of gas 3 light years tall, the deepest photograph ever taken. Hubble became the most productive scientific instrument in history, and that part is true. But that gallery almost never opened. For its first 3.5 years, Hubble was a punchline. What turned it around wasn't a clever workaround from the ground. It was 7 astronauts, a shuttle, and the most ambitious repair anyone had ever attempted in orbit. One of tonight's spacewalks ends with a man strapped to the side of the telescope, forcing 2 latches shut with his own body. 5 acts. It starts with a flake of paint. Hubble is a reflecting telescope. At the bottom of the tube sits one big curved mirror that catches starlight and throws it back up to a focus, 2.5 meters across. The whole instrument lives or dies on the shape of that one piece of glass. And that mirror was made beautifully, ground and polished to within a few billionths of a meter of its target shape. One of the smoothest large surfaces anyone had ever produced. Here's the part that took me a second read to absorb. The mirror was a masterpiece, and it was the wrong shape. Polished to perfection to the wrong prescription. The edge was too flat by about 2 microns, 1/50th the width of a human hair. That's the difference between precision and accuracy, and it's the whole tragedy in one sentence. Precision is hitting the same spot every time. Accuracy is whether that spot is the right one. The mirror was as precise as anything ever built, and it was aimed at the wrong answer perfectly every time. The defect is called spherical aberration, light from the edge, and light from the center focus in different places, so nothing is ever fully sharp. The launch itself went perfectly. April 24, 1990, Discovery flew Hubble to the highest orbit a shuttle had ever reached to get it above the thickest air. The arrays unfolded. The mission looked like a clean win. The pictures started coming down weeks later, and the team saw the halos immediately. By that summer, the verdict was in. The mirror was flawed, and there was no fixing the glass. It was bolted inside a bus-sized telescope, locked in orbit, 340 miles up. I've watched a lot of programs handle a public failure. The usual move is to bury it on page 140 of an annual report. Hubble was too big, too promised. For once, an agency had to admit exactly what went wrong in public. Which brings the story to the flake of paint. To shape a mirror this precisely, you build a piece of test equipment that tells the polishers, with light, exactly where the surface still needs to come down. The device that did that for Hubble was called a null corrector. Think of it as the master ruler. And the ruler was wrong. Inside it was a metering rod, aligned with a laser. The laser was supposed to bounce off a precise painted cap, but a tiny flake of black paint had chipped off, exposing bare metal, and the laser caught the metal instead. That moved the reference by 1 1/3 millimeters. 1 1/3 millimeters, and the one device that defined what correct meant. The polishers then did flawless work, making the mirror agree perfectly with the ruler that was lying to them. A fleck of paint, smaller than this sentence, cost $1.5 billion and 3 years of credibility. I had to read that twice, and the embarrassment buried something. There were 2 cheaper test devices in that same shop. Both flagged the problem. Both were waved off because the expensive, authoritative null corrector said everything was fine. A later board found the contractor had also kept test data to itself and ruled in plain words, that adequate prudence was not taken. But a mirror that's wrong by a known exact amount is a mirror you can correct. If the blur were random, Hubble was lost. It wasn't random. And once you know exactly how light is being bent the wrong way, you can build something that bends it back. The engineer who figured out how was named Jim Crocker. He couldn't reach the main mirror and couldn't replace it. He had to slip corrective optics in front of every instrument, inside a telescope never built to be opened. Crocker said the answer came to him in a hotel in Munich in the shower, watching the showerhead slide on its bracket. Little mirrors on motorized arms that deploy out from a box. They called it COSTAR. Eyeglasses for a telescope. There was a second fix too, a new main camera with the exact opposite of the mirror's error ground into its own optic. To make COSTAR fit though, the crew would have to pull out one of the original instruments and leave it behind. The cure cost them an instrument. And none of it meant anything until somebody installed it in orbit and gloves on a telescope never meant to be worked on by hand. So they practiced for months underwater with a full-size mock-up. Because they were going to get one try. December 2nd, 1993. The shuttle Endeavour on the riskiest, most watched repair flight NASA had ever scheduled. 7 crew. A record 5 spacewalks planned. Because the whole idea of fixing things in orbit was on trial. If a crew couldn't repair Hubble, the argument for a space station you build and service piece by piece got a lot weaker. This one flight was carrying the case for the next 20 years of human spaceflight. Now, the most ambitious repair ever attempted is the kind of line a press office writes, so let me ground it. Orbital repair had been done once before. In 1984, a shuttle crew caught the Solar Max satellite, wrestled it into the bay, and fixed it. So the idea wasn't science fiction. But Solar Max was one instrument in the couple of spacewalks. Hubble was 5, back-to-back on the most expensive object in orbit. A different scale of nerve. Jeffrey Hoffman and Story Musgrave handled one pair of spacewalks, Catherine Thornton and Tom Akers the other. They pulled the old camera and slid in the new one, a box the size of a baby grand moved by hand, that could not be allowed to touch the wrong thing. Hoffman, who's now a professor at MIT, described being out on the arm over the open telescope as having taken over the entire shuttle with his hands, and it nearly came apart on the first spacewalk. They went to close a set of equipment doors and 2 bolts wouldn't reset. The doors wouldn't latch, and an open door on Hubble was not something you fly home with. So Musgrave strapped himself to the telescope for leverage, and he and Hoffman forced the latches shut by hand. Body against the machine. There's a detail almost nobody mentions. Hubble's original solar wings flexed every time it crossed from night into day, a thermal snap, 16 times a day, that shook the telescope and ruined its aim. The crew replaced them. One old wing was so bent it wouldn't fold, and Thornton just let it go, released it by hand to drift away. 5 spacewalks. Then they let the telescope go and flew home, and nobody yet knew whether any of it had worked. The light came down in January of 1994, and the room bar reek. You can watch this footage. The people who'd spent 3 years being the team with the broken telescope see the first corrected image. A galaxy core that had been a smear was suddenly a clean, tight knot of stars. Same telescope, same galaxy, weeks apart. The blur on the left is the billion-dollar mistake. The sharpness on the right is what 5 spacewalks bought. From that week on, Hubble stopped being a punchline and started being the most important camera ever pointed at the sky. Once it could focus, the boldest thing Hubble ever did was point at nothing on purpose. In 1995, the director of the institute that runs Hubble, Robert Williams, had a block of telescope time he could spend however he wanted. He aimed Hubble at a tiny, boring patch of sky near the Big Dipper, a spot that looked completely empty, and stared at it for 10 days. 342 exposures of apparent nothing. He was advised against it, strongly. Colleagues thought it was reckless that the field would come back black. He used his director's discretion precisely because a committee would have killed it. Then the picture came back. That empty patch held around 3,000 galaxies. Not stars, galaxies. Each one billions of suns in a piece of sky you could blot out with a grain of sand at arm's length. They did it again, deeper in 2004, and pulled out close to 10,000 galaxies, some shining from when the universe was a few 100 million years old. One pointing, one patch of dark. The whole history of looking farther in a single frame. The deep fields were only half of it. Hubble was built, in part, to settle how fast the universe is expanding. A number astronomers had argued about for most of a century. It measured that rate more tightly than anyone had managed before. And then it did something better than settle the argument. It started a new one. In the late 1990s, teams using Hubble, including the astronomer Adam Ray's, found the expansion isn't just continuing. It's speeding up. They named the something dark energy, mostly a label for a thing nobody can fully explain. And here's the open file I find the most honest part of the whole story. The rate Hubble measures nearby comes out around 73. The rate you calculate from the early universe comes out around 67. Those two numbers should be the same number. They are not, and the gap has gotten sharper. They call it the Hubble tension. Unresolved in the precise sense, there isn't enough yet to close the file. The telescope that settled one number handed astronomers a better argument. That's what a working instrument does. And none of it would have lasted without people going back up. New instruments in '97, an emergency flight at the end of '99 when 4 of 6 gyroscopes had failed, new cameras in 2002. Every few years, a crew kept the most productive telescope in history alive by hand. Until the last time. The last visit almost didn't happen, and the reason is the hardest part of this story. In early 2003, the shuttle Columbia was lost on its way home. Every flight after that was re-examined for risk, and a Hubble mission had a specific problem. Its orbit isn't near the space station. The crew in trouble at Hubble couldn't take shelter there and wait. On those grounds in 2004, the head of NASA canceled the final servicing mission. Hubble would be left to slowly go dark. The reaction was loud and it was scientific, not just sentimental. A national review panel came down against the cancellation. Within days, the administrator who'd canceled it announced he was leaving. His successor reversed the decision. I'll say the quiet part out loud. Hubble's survival turned on a change of personnel. Not new physics. A different person in the chair. So in May of 2009, Atlantis flew the last mission by accepting the exact risk that had canceled it. With one addition, a second shuttle sat fueled on a second pad, ready to launch within days to bring the crew home. The triumph and the recklessness were the same decision. The work was the most delicate yet. John Grunsfeld, an astronaut who was also an astrophysicist, led spacewalks that opened up instruments in orbit. Cards held in by dozens of tiny screws, electronics never designed to be repaired in space, were cracked open by gloved hands and brought back to life. One instrument they resurrected was a spectrograph called STIS. Years earlier, a young calibration scientist had tuned that exact instrument from the ground. You may know him now as the astronomer Phil Plait, who's been candid that the instrument those astronauts brought back to life was the one he'd once worked on himself. They also took START out. By 2009, every instrument had its own correction built in, and the eyeglasses weren't needed anymore. And then they let it go. The arm released Hubble, the shuttle backed away, and that was the last time a human being was ever close to it. 2 years later, the shuttle program ended, which means the thing that saved Hubble 5 times no longer exists. So here's where it stands tonight. Hubble is 35 years old, running on fewer gyroscopes than it was built to need. Its orbit is slowly sinking, the thin air dragging it lower, and on the current track it comes down sometime in the 2030s. There's been talk of sending a commercial spacecraft up to give it a push. It was studied. It was declined. Right now, nothing is funded to save it. I've watched a lot of missions end. Most end quietly. An instrument switched off, a final signal, a line in a budget. Hubble's ending will be slower and stranger. A telescope launched blind, fixed by hand 5 times, that rewrote the textbooks, drifting lower in the dark with no rescue coming. It is still working tonight. That's the part I'd hold on to. It's not gone. It's just finally, after 35 years alone up there, a perfect mirror, polished to the wrong shape because of a fleck of paint. A crew that went up and fixed it by hand when the easy thing was to write it off. A blank patch of sky that turned out to hold 3,000 galaxies. And an argument about the size of the universe that the telescope started and still hasn't finished. The thing I keep coming back to isn't the gallery. It's that a program built something flawed, owned it in public, and then went back up again and again to make it right. That's rarer than a good photograph. It's still up there, still working. I'll be back when there's another one worth the hour. This has been Stardrift FM.